Alright everyone, so the last few days in Raid Shadow Legends have just been absolute madness, and today I wanted to do something a bit differently, and I wanted to go through a list of 10 good and bad things that every player is going to want to know before getting heavily invested in the game. And I also wanted to start off with the good things today first, because I feel like lately there have been more negative videos than positive videos. So let's talk about the 5 good things on the list, and then afterwards I'll talk about the 5 bad things. So let's start off with number 1 here, and I've got to give them credit where credit is due, because this is a big one, especially compared to so many other games in the similar genre of Raid, being an RPG mobile game, and that is visually and graphically, this game has got to be the best, if not one of the best out there. I mean, especially when you first get started and get into the game and you start to actually play, if you've got it going on a high frame rate, I mean, it really does blow you away, especially for a mobile game. And I know that out of all the comments that I read, all the criticisms people give about the game, it always comes back to the one point of why so many people stick around is there's just no other game really out there graphically and visually like Raid Shadow Legends. There's so many other games in this, genre, but they're all anime style. And sure, while their actual gameplay might be considered to be better than Raid Shadow Legends, maybe they got a more in-depth story, more actual content, more updates, and all that sort of stuff. For a lot of people, if the graphics is not what they are looking for, if it's not this type of style that they want, then everything else doesn't really matter. And that really is the one big thing that Raid has got going for it, is it just really does have that high quality production feel to it. So that's got to be number 1 on the list of good things there. So now moving on to number 2, and I want to talk about the actual combat system. And this is another thing where you can kind of compare it to a lot of other games in this genre. And I have to say that I think the combat system in Raid Shadow Legends is the perfect balance of fun, interesting, but also simplistic. You don't have any kind of crazy mechanics. I know a lot of games very similar to this in the genre have like these, crazy combat systems where they've got, cards swapping around and, building skill ups and doing all this crazy stuff. And it's like, you don't really know what's going on. And sometimes you just put it on auto mode and it feels like the auto mode is actually able to do it better than you in a lot of cases. And it's just really weird. And they have these crazy combat systems. But in a Raid, the combat system is pretty simplistic. You've got skills and cooldowns, and the first skill is always going to be like your skill that doesn't have a cooldown. So this is what they're always going to default to when everything else is on cooldown. And then, things are pretty easy to understand even from somebody who doesn't have a ton of experience with the game. You might not be able to get a full grasp on it, but it's not as crazy as a lot of games where, you get like, fill your star gauge by 5 points, and then your, reduce your ultimate, this, that, and then, power charge, it's just like all this crazy stuff. But in Raid, it feels like it's simplistic enough for a lot of people to be able to get into it, understand it, and kind of appreciate the combat even after not playing the game for that long. And I think, of course, Plarium has done this on purpose. Obviously, they want to make the new player experience as good as possible, but I do have to say myself, even after playing the game for over a year now, I really do like the overall balance of how the combat system works. Sure, individual champions, obviously, there's discrepancies on, who needs to be balanced and changed and whatnot, but overall, I think the combat system is actually pretty good in this game. So, alright, now moving on to number 3 on the good list here, that is the early game experience. And the early game experience in Raid Shadow Legends is pretty nice, actually. It's been a long time now since I remember everything about the early game experience, but I do know that the game does give you a lot of stuff early on. And a lot of games in this genre will do the same thing, and Raid Shadow Legends is absolutely no exception. I mean, it's been so long now since I've actually gone through and got all my campaign rewards, but I know there are a ton of rewards to get from the campaign. This is just the very end of the bar right here. There's also a whole bunch of stuff earlier. Then you've got all the difficulties here. You've got a bunch of other rewards. There's so many different aspects of the game. You've got your login rewards, which they're actually extending sometime soon. That's now going to be going up to 270 days. But you've also got the new player rewards. There's just a lot of freebies. And don't forget leveling up, too. I mean, sure, they've added level 60 to 100 lately, which is definitely not the same as levels 1 to 60, because in levels 1 to 60, you actually get a lot of stuff for your count, all those energy refills, but also increasing your maximum energy, and it really does feel like, you get a lot of stuff early on. But don't let that fool you, because even though this is number 3 on the good list, it's one of those things that works against you, because as you get further along and as those freebies start to dry up, this does become a bad thing later on, unfortunately. So All right, now moving on to number 4 on the list, and that is that all the dungeons and content I think are super fun to explore for the first time and for the first few times. But again, this is one of those things where it kind of turns into one of those things that works against you after you've been playing the game for a long time. But I mean, it's been so long now since I even remember going back to a lot of these stages in the campaign, but they are very well designed. They've got some pretty fun fights. They look very cool. Even the dungeons too. Like, you know, if you go through like Ice Golem's Peak, Spider, Minotaur, Dragon, Fire Knight for the first time, I mean, and you see those encounters for the first time and you're kind of progressing through it, it's a pretty visually stunning experience. But, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, you can really appreciate it a lot the first few times you do it, but when you realize that, you know, it's just, that's pretty much all the game has had in terms of content for the last year, and you're going to have to get used to grinding that if you play the game for a long time without really a whole lot of new stuff being added, then it does end up being something that does work against you. But it is very well designed, and it does look very, very cool. And now number 5 on the good list here, and that is there is a lot of early game satisfaction. And, you know, I'm sure Plarium has definitely done this on purpose, but, you know, just as an example here is shard pulls. The shard pull system is perfectly balanced towards the new player experience. They have designed it so that it's extremely fun and rewarding for new players, but as you play the game more and pull more shards, it becomes increasingly more frustrating and, of course, increasingly more tempting to spend money, because the shard system in the game, they don't really have like a very good system where, you know, they've got like rate up champions. Now they do have these 10 times events which come out every so often, but emphasis on they don't have a very good system. They still have all the champions in the champion pool even when those events actually come out, and when they do come out, there's 10 times the chances to actually get them. It's not as big of a rate up as you actually might think it is, especially compared to a lot of games in the similar genre. Now, you know, a lot of games in the similar genre, when they do have these rate up events to get certain champions, you'll actually have like a realistic chance of pulling the rate up champion, you know, whether it's 5% or 3% or whatever it is. You know, it might not be extremely high, but in some cases, the 10 times rate up events in raid, you still have to pull like 1,000 shards on average to actually get the champions that are rate up. So it's a very tricky one, and I really think Plarium needs to completely redesign their 10 times events and, you know, look at summoning in the future. Alright, so that is everything related to the good stuff. Also, there's a lot of really good rare champions in the game as well, which makes it an even better new player experience as well. As you don't just have to feel like you need to get epics and legendaries, as there's a lot of really good rares that you can pull that'll also be super useful for your account. But let's move into the other side of the scale here and talk about those 5 things that are really important to understand for people investing in the game that are unfortunately not good, but rather bad. And number 1, by far, is the monetization of this game. It is beyond terrible. It's awful. Not just the number of pop-ups, but the predatory nature of monetization in Raid Shadow Legends is, you know, you'll notice after playing the game for a while that nothing is consistent. You'll see pretty much the same stuff offered to you, but then some days it's higher in price, some days it's lower in price. It's just so bizarre and weird, and you figure out over time very quickly that the reason why the monetization system is like this is they are just trying to squeeze as much money out of you as possible however they can. So never really look at the pack stuff like too seriously, because, you know, if they can get any money from you, that's a win for them. In the end, it's all pixels to them. It doesn't matter how much they give you on your account, as they're just trying to get you to spend as best they can, and it becomes very obvious how predatory the system is the further you get along into the game. And now moving on to number 2 here is the actual freebies that are super plentiful early on. They really dry up as you get to the mid and late game. And I really emphasize really dry up, because this is very typical in a lot of games like this, is they'll give you a lot of stuff early on, but then it all dries up. But in Raid Shadow Legends, it really dries up, because as you get to the late game and you've been playing for a long time, there's not really a lot of free stuff that you get each day, especially the premium currency, which is the gems. You know, you get 10 of it from your dailies, right? You get occasionally a little bit from your clan boss fights. You get a little bit maybe from your gem tower if you have that built, which you should if you plan on playing for a while. but there's not really a ton of free stuff that the game gives you. Like, if you are invested in terms of the length that you've been playing the game, if you want to get this stuff, you're gonna have to spend. I would say this game, while it does have a free-to-play experience in comparison to so many other games in this genre, it's got to be one of the worst ones out there in comparison. So, all right, and now moving on to number 3, and that is all the aspects in the game that involve other players that are also somehow tied into your personal experience, like, you know, arena, PvP, tag team, tournaments, all that sort of stuff. I think it is not well balanced at all, and I think that is one of the big problems with the game. And again, tying into monetization and making money is, you know, Plarium knows that when they involve competition in some way, it's going to cause people to spend money because they want to, you know, obviously be better than other people, and it's balanced. The game in its competitive aspects is balanced around this principle here. So I think the PvP system, all aspects of it, the classic arena, the tag team arena, which is new, I think it all needs a rebalance and just needs to be redone. If you know, obviously, if they are looking for the gameplay experience and not to try to monetize it as best as possible, but you know, given that it's Plarium, they are trying to monetize it as best as possible. But then you've also got things like tournaments too, which are so inconsistent. The rewards are so weird. Sometimes they are good, sometimes they are bad. You never really know, and it's just all over the place. Same thing, you know, you could just tell that they have placed the system in a way to really monetize it as best as possible. As they've really, you know, they're not consistent. Like, sometimes you'll see crazy good rewards, probably when they're not selling that many items in the shop, and then other times you'll see really bad rewards, probably because they're, you know, they have perfectly good sales and their numbers are really strong in the shop. So, you know, don't take the tournaments and the PvP aspects of the game too seriously if you are, you know, looking at that, because even the clan boss, which is another aspect of the game that involves other people, I would say out of all of them that do directly relate to, you know, your gameplay experience being tied with other people, this is probably the best aspect, in my opinion. But even the clan boss still has plenty of its own issues right there. So I think the aspects of the game that just involve yourself, like campaign, dungeons, you know, all that sort of stuff, I think that that's probably a more positive side of the game than the you know, competitive aspects that do involve other people. So all right, and now moving on to number 4, and that is content. There is basically no new content ever added to this game, and if you guys are new, this is one of those things that you just need to understand, is I would not expect it to happen anytime too much in the future. We might get little things here and there, but we had one recent addition, the tag team arena, which is basically just the regular arena on a slightly larger scale. This was like the last 6 months worth of content added to the game, was just this one simple feature right here. And that's pretty much it. And everything that is added to the game in terms of new content also has a direct relation to their bottom line. Like, you could tell that they put it out there and there's a direct way that they are making money and monetizing it. And, you know, like all the dungeons, they're really cool. And this is one of those things that worked in my good list, is they're super fun to explore for the first time. But this is it. This is all we've got. This is all the game's had for the last year plus. So you have to understand that if you do get further along into the game, is don't expect, you know, a whole bunch of new stuff happening too often. And number 5 on the list is the shard and summoning system. And again, this was one of those things, super fun for new players, especially given there are so many good rares in the game, and it's so fun to collect a lot of really cool champions for the first time. But it gets more and more frustrating the further along you get, because all the champions are always in the actual champion pool, and, you know, the summoning events that they have can be incredibly random and incredibly frustrating. There's no consistency, and Plarium has even come out and said that they base their actual events and tournaments around the fact that they are analytics based. So, you know, if numbers are really good and they're making a lot of money from pack sales, then they're probably not going to release player friendly events that increase your rewards from summoning. Vice versa, if numbers are really low, then they're probably going to release more events that are summoning related. So you can kind of make of that how you will. That's been the center of a lot of the, you know, craziness that's been going on the last few days. But just understand that the events, especially summoning related, are not consistent. It's not like you're going to see them every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. There could be a couple, you know, a few days back to back, you know, 2 or 3 of them in a week or two, and then you could go on a 6-week or 2-month dry streak and not see a single one. And that's just the nature of the way way that they handle that stuff in the game. But anyway, that is going to be it for the video today. I shared a lot of stuff with you guys today, and you can kind of make of it how you will. So if you enjoyed this video, you want more like this in the future, consider subscribing to the channel. Feel free to leave a quick like as well. And until next time, have a great day, everyone. This is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.